Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. My business trip had been scheduled to last a week, but I wrapped up early, took the red eye, and pulled into the driveway before sunrise. There was something about coming home unexpectedly that felt strange, like walking into a scene that wasn't meant for me. The house was quiet, too quiet. I stepped inside, rolling my suitcase over the threshold, and immediately noticed something was off. The air smelled different, like a mix of fresh linen and something floral, as if someone had done a last-minute cleanup to erase any trace of what had really been happening here. The kitchen was spotless. No coffee cup in the sink, no pile of mail on the counter, no leftover dishes from the takeout Olivia usually ordered when I was out of town. Everything looked too perfect. I moved into the living room, glancing around. The throw pillows had been rearranged. The blanket she always left draped over the couch was folded neatly on the armrest. I frowned. Olivia wasn't the type to obsess over tidiness, especially not when she thought she had the house to herself. Then I noticed something else. A pair of high-end ski goggles sat on the entryway table. Not mine. I picked them up, turning them over in my hands. Expensive, barely used. The price tag was still on the side. Olivia had never mentioned buying new ski gear. We hadn't been on a ski trip together in years. My stomach tightened. I set the goggles down and pulled out my phone, scrolling through our recent messages. Me. Landed early. Can't wait to see you. No response. I checked the time. Nearly 6 a.m. Olivia was still asleep. Or at least, she should have been. Something wasn't adding up. I walked to the bedroom and pushed the door open. There she was, curled up in bed, her hair splayed across the pillow. Alone. Peaceful. Innocent. But I knew better. I watched her for a moment, my mind turning over every detail. The goggles, the immaculate house, the lingering scent of perfume that didn't belong. Then, as if sensing my presence, Olivia stirred, blinking awake. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Ryan." "Surprise," I said, my voice even. She sat up quickly, brushing her hair from her face. I thought you weren't coming back until Friday." I smiled. "Finished early." She forced a laugh, but there was something stiff about it. "That's great. I was planning to do some cleaning before you got home." I glanced around the already spotless room. "Looks like you already did." Her smile faltered for just a second, just long enough for me to catch it. I stepped forward, picking up my suitcase and setting it by the closet. "By the way, saw some new ski goggles in the hallway. Planning a trip?" There was again that split-second hesitation. "Oh, those," she said quickly. "They're for a client. I got them as part of a package deal, perks of working in travel." I nodded slowly. "Right, perks." She stretched, rubbing her eyes as if she could erase whatever thoughts were racing through my mind. I should get up and make some coffee. I didn't stop her as she climbed out of bed and padded toward the kitchen. I just stood there, staring at the perfectly made bed, at the faint indent on the other side of the mattress. Something was wrong, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. I sat at the kitchen table, watching Olivia move around like she hadn't just been caught off guard. She poured coffee, acting normal, humming softly like she didn't have a care in the world. But I had seen that flicker of hesitation when I mentioned the ski goggles. It had been brief, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A moment where she had to think before she answered. Olivia wasn't the type to second-guess her words. She was sharp, quick with explanations, and natural at spinning stories. But this time, something in her rhythm had faltered. I leaned back, taking a sip from my own mug. "So, which client are the goggles for?" She turned, mug in hand, eyebrows raised. "Huh, the ski goggles," I repeated. "You said they were for a client." "Who?" Her grip on the cup tightened just slightly before she laughed. "Oh, just one of my regulars. You don't know him." "Him?" I filed that away. She sat down across from me, smiling. "You're acting weird." "What's up?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just noticing things." Her smile didn't falter, but I saw the slight shift in her expression. She was reading me, trying to gauge whether I was onto something. I let the silence stretch between us before I finally spoke again. "You never mentioned another trip coming up." She blinked. "What?" "The ski resort," I said casually, setting my mug down. "You bought new goggles. That means you're probably heading somewhere soon." Where did this time? For the first time, a sliver of uncertainty crossed her face. "Oh," she said, clearing her throat. "Yeah, I actually do have a scouting trip coming up. Just a quick stop in Colorado to check out a new lodge. It's for a high-end client." She sipped her coffee, watching me over the rim of her cup, waiting to see if I'd accept her answer. I nodded slowly. "Makes sense." And just like that, the tension in her shoulders eased. She thought she had dodged whatever trap she believed I was setting. But what she didn't realize was that she had just confirmed my suspicions. The ski goggles weren't for a client. They were for her. I played along, talking about my trip, letting her ask questions about my meetings, pretending everything was normal. But my mind was already moving miles ahead. After breakfast, Olivia excused herself to take a shower. As soon as I heard the water running, I moved. I went straight to her work bag, unzipping it carefully, making sure to leave everything exactly as I found it. I rifled through her planner, flipping past pages filled with neat little notes about client trips and itineraries. Then I found it. A printed itinerary. Not for a client. For her. Departure, Denver International Airport Lodge. Whispering Pines Resort duration. 5 nights. I exhaled slowly, pressing my lips together. Whispering Pines. I knew that name. Olivia had been there before. More than once. She had told me it was for business, scouting locations for her travel agency. But if that were true, why was this itinerary printed separately? And why wasn't there a single mention of it in her planner? I slipped the paper back into place, my heart steady, my mind racing. Olivia thought she was smart, thought she had covered her tracks. She had no idea that this was the moment she lost. I walked back to the table, picked up my phone, and opened the GPS tracking app one had installed on her luggage months ago. I had never needed it before, never had a reason to doubt her trips. Now it was the most important tool I had. The app loaded, showing me the recent travel history. My stomach tightened as I saw the pattern. Whispering Pines. Over and over again. She wasn't scouting for clients. She was visiting someone. And the next time she went back, I was going to make sure she never saw it coming. I sat in my office, staring at the itinerary I had pulled from Olivia's bag. Whispering Pines Resort. 5 nights. Not for a client, not for business. This was personal. The pieces were falling into place, but I needed more. I wasn't about to make accusations without undeniable proof. Olivia was careful, too careful, but she'd slipped up by leaving this behind. If she had booked this trip for herself, what else had she hidden? I turned to my laptop, opening our shared credit card statement. Olivia handled most of the travel bookings for her clients, but she always used business accounts for that. Our personal cards were supposed to be separate, but when I scrolled through the transactions, something stood out immediately. Multiple charges to Whispering Pines, spa treatments, fine dining, and private excursions, none of which had ever been mentioned to me. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was proof. Olivia had been living a separate life, taking luxury vacations under the guise of work, spending our money to fund whatever secret she was keeping. I clicked back to the tracking app one had installed on her luggage and checked the historical data. Over the past 6 months, she had visited Whispering Pines 3 times, and each trip lined up perfectly with weekends I had been out of town for business. She had planned it all so carefully. Every lie, every excuse, every fake itinerary. But she hadn't been careful enough. I locked my jaw, staring at the blinking red dot on the screen, the digital footprint of her deception. My fingers hovered over my phone, tempted to call her right now, to demand answers, to watch her scramble for an explanation. But I stopped myself. No, that was exactly what she'd expect. She had been lying to my face for months, and she had gotten away with it because she thought I would never question her. If I confronted her now, she'd find a way to twist it, to make herself the victim, to cry and promise it was all a misunderstanding. I wasn't giving her that chance. Instead, I was going to make sure that when she finally realized she was caught, there would be no escape. I needed to keep playing along. That evening, Olivia came home acting like everything was normal. She kissed me on the cheek, dropped her purse on the counter, and stretched like she had no worries in the world. Long day? I asked, keeping my tone light. She sighed dramatically. You have no idea. I had to deal with a client who changed their mind 3 times about where they wanted to go. You'd think people would know what kind of vacation they want before calling a travel agent. I smiled, nodding. She was lying without hesitation, completely unaware that I knew the truth. She sat across from me at the table, casually stirring sugar into her tea. Hey, so I've got a work trip coming up next week. Whispering Pines again. I need to do some last-minute scouting. I almost laughed. She wasn't even trying to be original. Instead, I tilted my head. Another trip? Didn't you just go there last month? She hesitated for just a second before flashing a practice smile. Yeah, but the resort made some renovations, and they invited me to check them out before offering them clients. It's kind of an exclusive thing. Exclusive, all right. Just not in the way she was pretending. That's great, I said, leaning back. You always get the best deals. Her smile widened. Exactly. I'll be gone for a few days, but I promise I'll bring you back something nice. Like another credit card charge for a couple's massage with someone else? I nodded. I'm sure you will. She sipped her tea, completely at ease. I watched her, memorizing every expression, every little detail. She really thought she had me fooled. I stood up, stretching. Actually, I was thinking of surprising you with a little something, too. Her eyebrows lifted. Oh, what kind of something? I smirked. Guess you'll have to wait and see. Her curiosity sparked, but I could also see the calculation in her eyes. Olivia loved surprises when she was the one in control. When she wasn't, that was a different story. I kissed her on the forehead and walked out of the room, leaving her to wonder. She had no idea what was coming. I wasn't just going to catch her in the act. I was going to make sure she never forgot the moment her lies came crashing down. The next morning, I left for work as if everything were normal. Olivia kissed me goodbye, smiling sweetly, completely unaware that I had spent half the night poring over her lies. Her deception was carefully crafted, but she'd underestimated me. I wasn't some clueless husband who ignored the warning signs. I saw everything now. As soon as I got to my office, I shut the door and pulled out my phone. The GPS tracker on her luggage was already set up, but I needed more than just travel logs. I needed something undeniable, something she wouldn't be able to weasel her way out of. I opened my laptop and started digging. Whispering Pines Resort had an online portal where guests could log in, manage their reservations, and book additional services. If Olivia had been as careless as I suspected, there would be traces of her visits. I tried logging in with the password she used for most of our shared accounts. No luck. But when I added an exclamation mark at the end, one of her usual habits, it worked. I was in. The reservation history loaded in front of me, and my pulse slowed as I took it all in. 3 past trips, each booked under her name, each labeled as personal travel. Spa services, private ski lessons, and there it was, a couple's retreat package. I clicked on the details, scanning through them. 2 guests, 1 private chalet, 5 nights. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. She had done everything short of leaving a signed confession. Now, I just needed to find out who she had been meeting. I scrolled further and found something even more interesting. The couple's retreat package listed a specific ski instructor for personalized training. Daniel B. I switched tabs and pulled up the resort's website. Their staff directory was right there, photos and short bios of the top instructors. And there he was, Daniel Brennan. Tall, athletic, the perfect blend of rugged and charming. The type of guy Olivia had always claimed she had no interest in. Except now, she had been taking private lessons with him for months. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. This was the truth. Olivia had lied straight to my face. She had gone on luxury vacations with him while pretending it was work. And worst of all, she had been so confident in her lies that she had never expected me to find out. I checked the dates of her upcoming trip. 2 days from now. 2 more days, and she'd be back in that same chalet, thinking she had fooled me again. I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to let her walk right into the trap. That evening, I played my part flawlessly. I came home, kissed her on the cheek, asked about her day like nothing had changed. She had no idea that I had seen her reservations, no idea that I knew about Daniel Brennan. While she made dinner, I leaned against the counter. So, when do you leave for Whispering Pines? She looked up, brushing her hair behind her ear. Friday morning. I'll be back Tuesday. Lies, stacked on top of more lies. I nodded. Must be exciting, getting to stay at the same place again. She laughed. Yeah, I mean it's work, but at least it's a beautiful location. I smirked. You bet. Do you even need a tour guide at this point? She froze for just half a second before recovering. It's different every time. They always add new activities for the clients, so I have to stay updated. I took a sip of water, watching her. She was good, but not that good. Speaking of trips, I said casually, I was thinking we should take one together. Maybe somewhere tropical. Her face lit up with forced enthusiasm. That sounds amazing. We should plan something soon. I already knew we wouldn't. She wasn't planning for us. She was planning for him. That night, while she packed her bags, I moved quietly through the house, making my own plans. 2 more days. 2 more days, and Olivia was going to learn exactly how it felt to be blindsided. The next morning, Olivia was already up, moving through the house with the kind of energy that only came when she was excited about something. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, watching her pack the last few things into her suitcase. She thought she was heading off for another perfect getaway, another trip where she could lie to my face and escape without consequence. She had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. I had spent the night finalizing my plan. The GPS tracker on her luggage was set, but I needed more. I needed undeniable proof, something that couldn't be spun into an excuse or a misunderstanding. So, before she woke up, I made a few calls. A well-placed tip to the resort's security team ensured that footage of Olivia's movements would be saved this time. A small payment to a private investigator in Colorado meant I'd have eyes on her from the moment she stepped off the plane. She could lie all she wanted. The truth would speak for itself. She zipped up her suitcase and turned to me, smiling like a wife with nothing to hide. I can't believe you're not jealous, she teased. Me going off to a gorgeous resort while you're stuck here working. I smirked. I trust you. The lie tasted bitter, but it rolled off my tongue effortlessly. She laughed, grabbing her phone and glancing at the time. I should get going. Traffic to the airport is awful in the mornings. I nodded, setting my mug down. Have fun. She kissed me on the cheek, lingering for just a second before pulling away. Love you. I smiled. Love you too. And just like that, she was gone. I waited exactly 15 minutes before pulling out my phone and opening the tracking app. The little red dot moved steadily along the highway, heading toward the airport. I switched to the live feed of her credit card transactions, refreshing until I saw it. An airport lounge charge. First class, of course. Olivia wouldn't settle for anything less. Everything was going according to plan. By the time she landed in Colorado, my investigator was already in place. He had instructions to document everything, her arrival, her check-in, who she met with. I didn't have to wait long. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A message from the investigator. She just arrived at Whispering Pines. Checked in under her name. The ski instructor arrived 10 minutes later. Different check-in, different room, but they walked in together. I exhaled slowly, pressing my fingers against my temple. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't just hidden transactions or vague excuses. It was real. I scrolled down, opening the photos he had sent. Olivia at the front desk, smiling as she received her keycard. Olivia waiting by the elevator, checking her phone. And then him, Daniel Brennan. Tall, athletic, every bit the charming instructor she had been sneaking away to see. The next photo showed them together, standing close, her face tilted up toward his as they exchanged a few quiet words before disappearing down the hall. I stared at the screen, my grip tightening around the phone. She had played this game so well. Lied so effortlessly. Smiled at me every morning while planning her little escapes. But she had made one fatal mistake. She underestimated me. I tapped out a response. Keep watching. I want everything. I set the phone down, breathing deeply. The anger was there, simmering just beneath the surface, but I wouldn't let it control me. No, I was past that now. Because Olivia thought this was just another trip. She had no idea it was her last. I stared at my phone, refreshing the incoming updates from my investigator. Every new message was another dagger to what was left of our marriage, another confirmation of the truth I had already accepted. Olivia was exactly who I had feared she had become, calculated, deceptive, and completely unbothered by the lies she was feeding me. But she had made one critical mistake. She thought she was untouchable. The latest message came through. They just left the main lodge, headed toward the private chalets. Separate at first, but he followed a minute later. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening around the phone. I tapped on the photos. Olivia walking alone through the snow-covered path, the wind tugging at her coat. A minute later, Daniel Brennan following in her footsteps, taking the same path to the private chalets. It was obvious, practiced, like they had done this before. And now I had everything I needed. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, forcing myself to breathe evenly. My heart wasn't racing anymore. The rage had settled into something colder, sharper. There was no doubt, no hesitation. The only thing left was execution. I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to ruin her. I picked up my phone and made the call. "Hey," I said when my contact answered. "It's time to set everything up." A pause, then a slow exhale. "You're sure?" "100%. "All right," he said. "Everything will be ready by tomorrow night." "You want it big, right?" I smirked. Bigger than she could ever imagine. I hung up, staring at the screen for a moment. Olivia had no idea that her perfect little affair was about to be broadcast in the worst way possible. She had planned this trip down to the last detail. Every moment designed to be flawless, a seamless blend of business and pleasure. But now she was walking straight into the biggest mistake of her life. That night, I barely slept. I didn't need to. Every part of my plan was already set in motion. By morning, Olivia sent her usual check-in text. "Olivia, good morning. Just finished breakfast. The resort is incredible, as always. Wish you were here." Lies. Every single word. I typed back, keeping my response casual. "Me. Glad you're having fun. Don't forget to take some pictures for me." She didn't know I already had all the pictures I needed. Later that day, my investigator sent another update. They spent the afternoon skiing together. Lots of laughing, touching, close moments. Now back at the chalet. I tapped on the video attachment. It was short, just a few seconds, but enough. Olivia and Daniel, standing at the base of the slopes, his hand brushing against her back as they spoke. Her laughing at something he said, eyes shining with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen from her in years. My stomach tightened. Not because I was heartbroken. No, that feeling had already passed. This was confirmation. I dialed my contact again. "We still good for tonight?" "Everything's locked in," he confirmed. "You're really going through with this?" "Oh, I'm just getting started." I ended the call, exhaling slowly. Tonight was going to be a night Olivia would never forget. She thought she was on top of the world. She had no idea she was about to fall. The sun had set over the snowy peaks of Whispering Pines, casting long shadows across the luxury resort. Olivia thought she was settling in for another perfect night in her secret little world, tucked away in a private chalet with Daniel Brennan. She thought she had pulled off another flawless escape. But she had no idea I was already here. I had arrived at the resort an hour ago, slipping in unnoticed. The staff, already in on my plan, had set everything in motion. Cameras had been checked, security footage had been secured, and the final piece of my revenge was ready to unfold. Now, all I had to do was wait. From my spot near the main lodge, I kept my eyes on the path leading to the chalets. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I adjusted my gloves, my pulse steady. My investigator had already confirmed it. Olivia and Daniel were inside, alone. The final nail in the coffin. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my contact inside the resort. "Security footage is ready. You want it queued up?" I typed back one word. Yes. This was it. I took a deep breath, exhaling into the cold air, then made my way toward the chalet. I moved quietly, slipping through the trees along the side of the path, keeping out of sight. The warm glow from the windows spilled onto the snow, and I could see their silhouettes inside, moving, laughing, completely unaware that the walls were closing in on them. I reached the back entrance and placed my hand on the doorknob. Unlocked. Typical. I pushed the door open, stepping inside with calm, measured steps. The warmth of the cabin rushed over me, the crackling fireplace filling the space with a soft glow. Olivia's coat was draped over the chair, her scarf tossed onto the couch. Careless, comfortable, like this was home. But it wasn't. Not anymore. I walked deeper into the chalet, my footsteps slow and deliberate. A voice drifted from the next room. Hers. Light, teasing, so familiar yet completely foreign now. Then another voice. His. They were close. Just past the doorway. I stepped forward, and then I knocked. The silence was instant. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slow footsteps approached the door. It swung open, and there she was, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair slightly damp, her eyes widening in pure shock as she took in the sight of me, standing there. Ryan. Olivia's voice barely made it past her lips. I smiled. Surprise. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, scrambling for words. Her entire face had gone pale. Then Daniel appeared behind her, shirtless, confused at first, until his brain caught up with the situation. I looked him over once, then turned back to Olivia. Aren't you going to invite me in? She swallowed hard, stepping back as I walked inside, taking in the scene. The wine glasses on the table, the half-burned candles, the blanket tossed across the couch. It was all so romantic. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. You really had this all planned out, didn't you? Ryan, I can explain. Olivia started, her voice trembling. I held up a hand, cutting her off. Oh, no need. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. See, I already know everything. The TV in the corner flickered to life. The resort security footage played in full clarity. Olivia and Daniel sneaking into the chalet earlier that evening. Her checking in, him arriving moments later. The stolen glances, the subtle touches. She watched in horror as the truth unfolded in front of her, her hands flying to her mouth. Daniel took a step back. Dude, I turned to him, my smile never wavering. I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you. His mouth snapped shut. I turned back to Olivia. So tell me, is this what scouting for clients looks like? She shook her head rapidly, eyes glistening. Ryan, please. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. You know, I actually did get you something for this trip. I held it out. She took it hesitantly, hands shaking as she pulled out the contents. A single plane ticket. One way. Back home. No return flight, I said calmly. Because after tonight, there's nothing left for you to come back to. She stared at the ticket, her breath hitching. Ryan, don't do this. Please. I tilted my head. Don't do this? Olivia, you already did it. I'm just making sure you live with the consequences. She reached for me, but I stepped back. And then, as if on cue, voices rose from outside. Guests making their way to the main lodge for the resort's exclusive winter gala. Our original tradition, the one Olivia had pretended to care about for years. I smirked. You might want to get going. The last flight leaves in 2 hours. I turned, heading for the door, not giving her another chance to speak. Because Olivia had already said enough, and I was done listening. I stepped out of the chalet into the crisp night air, my breath curling in front of me like smoke. Behind me, Olivia stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale, the one-way ticket trembling in her hands. Daniel had retreated further inside, probably trying to figure out if running was a viable option. I didn't care. He was irrelevant now. The real show was about to begin. The path from the chalets led back toward the main lodge, where the resort's winter gala was already in full swing. The elite of Whispering Pines had gathered, investors, celebrities, influencers, and high-profile guests who came not just for the slopes, but for the exclusivity. Olivia had always loved these events, basking in the attention, relishing the prestige. Tonight, she would be the center of attention for a very different reason. As I walked toward the grand ballroom, my phone buzzed. A message from my contact inside. We're ready when you are. Perfect. I slipped inside, unnoticed, blending into the crowd. Guests in elegant attire sipped champagne, engaged in quiet conversation beneath the soft glow of chandeliers. A stage had been set up at the far end of the room, where the resort CEO was finishing his opening remarks. I moved toward the side of the stage, where the event coordinator waited. She glanced at me, her eyes sharp. You sure about this? I smiled. Absolutely. She gave a small nod, then turned to the tech team. A silent cue. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as the massive projection screen behind the stage flickered to life. The conversations quieted as the guests turned their attention forward, expecting another promotional montage of Whispering Pines world-class amenities. What they got instead was something far more entertaining. The screen lit up with security footage from earlier that evening. Olivia and Daniel arriving separately, but making their way to the private chalets within minutes of each other. Another angle showed them exchanging whispers at the front desk. And then, the clearest shot of all, Olivia unlocking the chalet door, looking over her shoulder once before stepping inside, Daniel following close behind. A murmur spread through the room, growing louder with each passing second. A few gasps, some hushed laughter. Confusion rippled across the guests, their eyes darting around as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. And then, a single voice shattered the silence. "What the hell is this?" I turned just in time to see Olivia standing at the entrance of the ballroom, her face stricken, eyes darting wildly between the screen and the stunned audience. Right on cue, she stumbled forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she shoved past guests. "Turn it off," she shrieked. "This isn't funny." But no one moved. No one stopped it. The footage played on, looping the most damning parts. Olivia smiling, Daniel whispering in her ear, the door closing behind them. By now, people were whispering, some openly smirking. A few guests exchanged knowing glances, already recognizing her from past galas. "Wasn't that Ryan's wife?" Olivia turned to me, her breath ragged. "You did this." I slipped my hands into my pockets, tilting my head. "You plan a whole getaway, Liv?" I figured I'd return the favor. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." I let out a small laugh. "You humiliated yourself." She shook her head furiously, tears forming in her eyes. But there was something else behind them, something desperate. Olivia wasn't upset because she felt guilty. She was upset because she got caught. I pulled something else from my coat pocket and held it out. Another envelope. She hesitated, then snatched it from my hands, ripping it open. Her face twisted as she read the first page. "Divorce papers. Already signed my part," I said, my voice calm. "All that's left is yours." She clutched the papers so tightly her knuckles went white. "Ryan, you can't just throw everything away like this." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not the one who threw it away, Olivia." For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the papers, her lip trembling. Then she looked around, at the faces watching her, at the hushed whispers, at the people pretending not to stare. Reality was setting in. Her perfect image was gone. Her life, as she knew it, was over. I stepped back, giving her space to take it all in. "You should go," I said quietly. "Your flight leaves soon." She swallowed hard, her breathing uneven. "Ryan," I turned away before she could finish. I didn't need to hear it. I walked toward the bar, nodding to the bartender. "Whiskey. Neat." He poured the drink, sliding it over with a knowing smirk. "Gotta say, that was one hell of a show." I chuckled, taking a sip. "Oh, it's not over yet." Across the room, Olivia stood frozen, still gripping the divorce papers, her mind likely scrambling for an escape. But there was none. Not this time. I let out a slow exhale, savoring the warmth of the whiskey. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.